Hello and welcome to my banned book report. My name is Ryan McKnight, and I chose to read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. This is a memoir written by the popular American author. It is one of three memoirs which she has written, which details her life growing up. I enjoy reading, and while book shopping one day, I had come across this classic American work. I had this book on my radar for some time because of its banned nature and also because of Angelou's status as a civil rights activist. And this banned book project seemed like the perfect opportunity to look deeper into this story. Angelou is a renowned poet as well as memoirist. She is an actress that's appeared in Roots in 1977. Her books are no strangers to being banned. They have been pulled off of shelves in Maryland and Washington schools, and more recently have been pulled out of a naval academy due to Trump administration's DEI bans. The first time that Maya Angelou, then named Marguerite Johnson, had moved to Stamps, Arkansas was in 1931 at the age of 3. Her parents had divorced and decided to move Marguerite and her brother Bailey Jr. to Arkansas to live with her grandmother, whom she called Mama, and her disabled uncle named Willie. Mama was a well-respected and devoutly religious woman. She had a reputation for being the only black woman in Stamps who had been referred to as ma'am by a white person. Her storefront was a hub where the local black cotton pickers would come to buy lunch, interact, and it was in this store where Maya and Bailey learned to read. 4 years after moving to Stamps, Marguerite and her brother would move back to St. Louis to live with their mother and her new boyfriend, Mr. Freeman. Much like Mama, her mother was a respected member of the community, but she was also feared. According to Angelou, there is a story where her mother gets into a fight with a man, he breaks her nose, but not before she shoots him in the stomach. Roughly 1 year after moving back to St. Louis, Marguerite was raped by her mother's boyfriend, Freeman. She describes having feelings of guilt and shame, and she says that she feels in some way responsible for what had happened to her. Freeman threatened Angelou by saying that if she told anyone, then he would kill Bailey Jr. He was eventually caught and put on trial where he was found guilty. On her mother's side existed a very strong family dynamic. Angelou had many uncles, brothers of her mother, who would defend anyone in the family, and they would often fight alongside each other. Before Freeman was able to serve his sentence of 1 year and 1 day in jail, he would be found beaten to death, and there was no culprit ever found. At this point in her life, Marguerite had been raped on 3 separate occasions, and she would go mute for several years on account that she believed her voice had killed her rapist. Her recollection of these events remains calm and cold, and in maintaining that quiet, calm, collected demeanor in telling this story and these mature events, it has proven problematic for this book to remain on shelves. After these events had transpired, Marguerite had a difficult time staying adjusted to life in St. Louis. Her mother, Vivian, decided to move the young Marguerite and Bailey Jr. back to Arkansas to live with Mama and Uncle Willie. She and Bailey would spend their days reading, working at the store, and getting involved in Mama's church. Critics of this book popularly argue that the content up until this point in the story, namely the rape scene or Freeman's murder, is too graphic to be displayed in schools. And this graphic content, in tandem with Angelou's more simply put approach to storytelling, has proven enough to result in the banning of this book on many occasions. Angelou wrote this memoir many years after the events had transpired, so she has an air of resolved reflection and an almost matter-of-fact way of presenting her life story that makes parents everywhere uncomfortable with their children reading the graphic content of this story. But the scenes so far described are not the only aspects of this story that have resulted in this book's banning. After moving back to Stamps, Angelou tells a story about how God finally punished her for stealing candy from Mama's shop by giving her a severe cavity. Mama took Marguerite to a white dentist who owed her for lending him money during the Great Depression. But upon arrival, the dentist proved himself to be a very racist individual and choosing to use slurs directed at Mama and Marguerite. When Bailey and Marguerite moved back to Stamps, it was during the Jim Crow era. One day, when returning home from the movies, Bailey encountered a group of men pulling the bloated body of a black man who had been beaten, bound, and dumped into a pond. And after he and Marguerite encountered this, Mama thought that it would be best for the pair to return to St. Louis where it would be safer. When living in St. Louis, Marguerite had the opportunity to spend a summer with her father, Bailey Sr., and during this stay, she would encounter abusive behavior from her father's, at the time, girlfriend, and on one occasion ended up driving with her father across the border to Mexico. He would take the pair to a small Mexican bar, get drunk to the point of passing out, leave Marguerite alone in the bar so he could have a sexual encounter with his Mexican girlfriend. Upon returning to her father's trailer, she had a physically abusive encounter with Bailey Sr.'s American girlfriend, who had sliced Marguerite with a piece of broken glass. The next day, Bailey Sr. took Marguerite to stay at a friend's house, but she would end up running away to spend the rest of her summer living out of broken cars in a junkyard with a group of homeless children. This is where she learned to swear. When she was in high school, Marguerite was introduced to a group of hustlers through her mother. She would work alongside these individuals to bait and steal money from rich, racist, white businessmen. Since black men were not afforded the opportunity to be rich businessmen, they used their minds to profit off the businessmen who kept them oppressed. This was their way of getting back at the oppressive group for the injustices that the black community had experienced. In the closing chapters of this memoir, Angelo discusses the exploration of her sexuality. She became obsessed with looking into lesbian literature, and in order to dispel any doubts that she may have had about her sexuality, she decided that the best choice was to seduce a young man into having sex with her, and that's how she ended up being pregnant with her first son, Guy. With the conclusion of this memoir, the book has been full of very mature themes: morals, racism, sexuality, violence, sexual abuse. Though it could be argued that these themes are too mature for some students, I think the fact of the matter is that all of these events happened to a girl between the age of 3 and 17. If it happened to Marguerite, it can happen to anyone. I believe that Angelo's analyses of the events that took place in this book could be beneficial to anyone going through something similar in their life. I'd recommend this book to anyone above the middle school age, and I believe that the content of this book is not too extreme, though it can be uncomfortable. I find this book's banning, especially with current DEI purges, as being insulting to Maya Angelou's experiences and her magnificence as an author. I look forward to rereading this book with fresh eyes and a deeper understanding. Thank you.